This episode of the Adventure Jogger is brought to you by OTRAM, Ron Anderson, Marathon Animal Rescue, Rick Albanese, and Megan Fitzgerald McGowan, and the rest of the awesome Patreon crew and supporters, and you, the listener. The Adventure Jogger, a podcast about trail and ultra running. Meet fascinating runners from the front, middle, and back of the pack, sharing inspiring and funny stories about life and running. Running should be fun, and so should running podcasts. I'm your host, Stephen Kornhaus, and this is the Adventure Jogger. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Adventure Jogger podcast. Today, I've got an awesome guest from back on the East Coast. I was looking over his ultra sign up earlier, and he's run a lot of races over the last several years, a lot of races. So we'll have plenty to chat about. And I am super excited to have Scott Perry on the podcast. So welcome, Scott.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I know we've been friends on Facebook for probably a couple of years, but we actually met in person this year when you flew out to Colorado for a little trip you were doing and crashed at my house for a night, and we chatted all things rock climbing and running. And it was, good to put a name to the face. So
Exactly.
good to see you again. Definitely.
Yeah. You as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know for our listeners out there that don't know you, I know you a little bit, but for the listeners that don't know you, maybe tell me your story, your running story, like what brought you to the world of running.
Yeah. So I started just over 10 years ago. I kind of woke up one morning in um, October and was like, I want to run 50 miles this month without any real preceding running background, which I don't exactly know what made me decide that, but my goal for that month was to run just 2 miles a day, 25 out of the 31 days of October, taking rest days every, I don't know, 5 or 6, just kind of as needed or wanted. Never really was a goal of mine to do a 5K or go more than 2 miles. I just wanted that number 50 in a month. And so I achieved that and I basically stopped running. Like I said, I never knew the running community that was out there. I never knew trail races or the ultra community. None of that existed in me, to me. So it wasn't until the next year, the next year being 2014, that I started actually running, is what I would call it. And I went out and did 2.5 miles. So I had this the exact 2 mile block around my neighborhood.
Nice.
And I did that loop and then went out for another quarter mile and then went back a quarter mile. I was like, wow, I just did 2.5. So that kind of shot me over into my first race, 5K, February of 2014. And I paced that race perfectly. It was an amazing experience. I sometimes still look back at those photos and I'm like, what am I doing? Classic rookie mistakes of, it was February, so it was cold. So I had cotton sweatpants. I had the race shirt, the 5K race
Yeah.
shirt wearing on
Nice.
top of another shirt. Yeah, just my phone in my, it's just funny to look back where I was.
Because you're from North Carolina, right? So
I am, yeah.
it's probably in like the 30s in February, right?
Probably, yeah. So
Yeah.
to anybody now or myself now, racing a 5K in the 30s is like shorts and maybe a long sleeve,
Right.
maybe short sleeves and a pair of gloves. I don't know, depending on if it's sunny or cloudy. But yeah, so that kind of kickstarted things, and I was excited. So I looked at 10K training programs online. I think I found the Hal Higdon, I think is how you say it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, And I remember the first time I did 5 miles, and then the first time I did a 10K under an hour, and it was like the coolest thing ever. This was
Nice.
actually an official race that I did this. The training plan, called for like a
Yeah.
5.5 or maybe 6 mile run, and I decided to go 6.2 under an hour, and it was like the coolest thing.
Nice.
Yeah, so that then kind of quickly led to my first half and then first full in 2015. And so I climbed that chain 5K, 10K, half full, generally speaking, in a logical progression, right?
Right.
Between my first 5K was February of 2014, and then my first marathon was November of 2015. So,
Okay.
about 2 years to, climb all the way up to a full marathon. And at that time, it was the most painful thing I'd ever done, the most difficult 4.5 hours, I think it was, of my life. I never knew anything beyond that existed. I never knew trail running existed. That was just like a check all of the boxes kind of thing.
Right.
And I found actually the Raleigh Trail Runners right here local to where I live in Raleigh in, I think it was 2018. So it was like a solid 3 years after my first full that I started running trails.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so I don't exactly remember what I did between 2015 and 2018. A couple of just road running things here and there. I never went beyond 15 or 18, maybe 20 miles, but without a goal of ever doing a marathon or anything with that, with those intentions. But yeah, when I joined the trail running community, it was just an eye-opening experience. I loved the more community aspect of it, less, how do you call it? Less emphasis on pace and more just like
Right.
having
Yeah.
fun, social, you run
Not worried about your
off
split.
sun. Exactly, right. Um, yeah, so then I did my first 50K in 2019. So only about a
Okay.
year after joining the trail running group. And even though, the first 50K is only 5 miles more than a marathon, it took me like 4.5 hours longer, 4 hours longer, something
Now,
something like that.
was that the Sky to Summit? Was that your
It
first 50K?
it was, yeah, up in
Okay.
Georgia. So yeah, Skydive Summit had which is actually I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now is the Skydive Summit race.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, in November. But yeah, I mean not definitely not an easy, you could say, first 50K. I think there was like 8,500 feet of climbing, lots of single track.
Yeah, that's
Um
pretty steep.
to ridiculously cold river crossings up to my knee. It was like 20 something degrees when I started. Yeah. So that kind of kickstarted things. And that was a run bum event. And that went exceptionally well. And that really, allowed me to find my niche. And as you pointed out earlier, I'm wearing the Team Run Bum shirt. I was invited to be an ambassador for their trail running organization for
Nice.
this year. So I'm super excited for that.
What
Um,
what exactly, like,
yeah,
break that down for me. Like, what does that mean? Like a run bum ambassador? Like, what do you do, or what does that mean?
yeah. So previously, we were able to invite family and friends to come run races for like a small discounted rate.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and so I was an ambassador last year, I would think, as well. So this year they're trying to do things a little bit differently. We're trying to expand more of like the trail running community aspect and less emphasis on like just the actual races.
Right.
And so we're doing a bunch of like everyone on the team is doing group runs. So my schedule has been super busy so far this year that I haven't actually been able to host any at the moment. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we're hosting some group runs. And we get special perks, as you can see, like the T-shirt and some swag and stuff. But it's more of just like spreading the word of trail running and getting new people who are less involved around the trail running community to just see
Right.
what it's like. Because honestly, if somebody had introduced me to trail running between 2014, as we mentioned, when I started running, in 2018, before I even like stepped
Yeah.
foot on a trail, I definitely think it would have led to a faster progression. Not as if like the one I had was bad in any way. But yeah, just like bringing more people together, experiencing the trails, and
That-
stuff like that. So that's what their main intentions are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, because that's more people need to know about trail running. Like, it's amazing, because that was like my whole reason for starting my YouTube channel was, I wanted to spread the word about trail and ultra running, like, and get
Mhm.
more people to convert from roads to trail and like see how amazing it is. So that, Sean, Runblum is out there doing this with this team is pretty cool, getting people involved. And now, like, as an ambassador, if you're talking to someone that maybe he's never run trail before, and maybe it's a young Scott Perry you're talking to that's never run trail before. Do you have like any like do they get a discount because you invited them or anything, or is it just like you're trying to bring them into the scene?
Not as of now. That might be something they want to expand on in the future. But right now the team is pretty large. So
Yeah.
again, it's just trying to spread our outreach. Because a lot of us on the team are from all over.
Nice.
Most of the run bum events are like on the East Coast, but
Mhm.
members of our team expand even further than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
That's really
it's
cool.
so much fun just to talk about running in
Yeah.
general, but trail
Right.
and community and stuff like that. Yeah.
Now I know you mentioned that your first trail race was the Sky to Summit, the 50K, right? Was that the first trail race or just the first 50K?
First ultra. So
First ultra.
I actually did the Umstead Trail Marathon.
I
Um
see that on your ultra sign up. Yeah.
yeah, so what year was that since you're looking at it right
That
now?
was March 3rd, 2018.
2018. Okay, yeah. So that must have been shortly after I joined, or maybe I joined RTR in 2017.
I was
Maybe
going to
I'm
say,
getting
because
my date.
2017, I see several what I believe are trail races. Like there's the South Mountains Half Marathon, the
Okay,
Quest of
yeah.
the Crest, Vertical 10K,
Hmm.
Grand Further Mountain 25K, Table Rock Ultras 30K. Like those are all trail races, right?
Of course. Yeah, yeah. So it must
Yeah,
have
those
been
are all
2017.
2017.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's
So
my
2017 is when you got into trail. Got okay.
yes. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Uh
and so that was when you met or got hooked up into that RT or the Raleigh Trail community was in 2017.
yeah.
Okay, nice. All right, so yeah, you did the Sky to Summit, and
Hmm.
then continued that journey, kind of or the progression a little further.
Yes. So
Yeah.
from 50K, I did a bunch of 50Ks. Slowly went up to some odd distances, like a long 50K, 35 miles. I did a 40-mile race and then did a 45-mile race and then did my first 50-mile race and then actually did a 54-mile race. So, like, super incremental progression
Right.
steps, but the races that I've chosen to do, a couple miles further than the previous longest, I mean, they're not easy races. They're
Right. Yeah.
definitely like top of the top, grueling, difficult races.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually want to ask you about one that I
mhm.
see on Ultra Sign Up here because it sounds interesting just from the name, but it says it's the Vertical Night Challenge and it was a 16-mile race. What exactly is that? Like just a straight uphill like sky running race?
No, that was in Hidden Night, North Carolina. So unfortunately, we don't have a true vertical mile worth of climb.
Okay.
Actually, anywhere in this state, unless you
The Smoky Mountains, I
maybe,
think, is the only place you can get a vertical mile.
yeah,
Is in Gatlinburg.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's like a lot of roads you have to take to a trailhead.
Yeah.
But no, the vertical night challenge is a fun little twist on the vertical mile challenge, which I've done once or twice as well.
Okay.
So it's a 2-mile loop in Hidden Night, North Carolina, that climbs like a super steep rock face. It's at Rocky Face Recreational Center. So it climbs like a super steep, bare, exposed rock face, and then takes like a trail, zigzagging its way down. And you do that 8 times in the race, which would equate to a vertical mile cumulative of ascent.
Oh
So
wow.
that is held in It's in the summertime. I know it's just like blazing hot because you're climbing this exposed rock face. I think it's August
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, it
And
was
then,
August.
yeah, one of the years the summer one got shifted around because maybe of COVID or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like there's another one in October, it looks like.
Yeah, well, the vertical night challenge is the same 2-mile loop on that crazy course, except it starts
Okay.
at 6 p.m.
Oh,
So
nice. That's
that
cool.
is held in October. Yeah, and so the cool thing is if you do both of them, I think in the same year, you get a finisher's buckle. Now I know the uh, you know prize for 100-mile races is the buckle, so I felt a little bit
Right.
guilty for receiving this small little buckle for doing combined only 32 miles, just over 50K. But it's a fun little. fun
That's
little
so
thing
cool.
to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I just saw that on there. That looked like it sounded pretty neat to do
Mhm.
that. So anyway,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you on your
No, no, no. Yeah. That race is super fun because all your family and friends can like set up tents along the little flat part greenway at the bottom of
Oh,
the
cool.
loop. And you see each other like every half hour, maybe. Um, so for 16 miles every half hour, you get to see family and friends. So it's a whole big party.
Oh, that's
There's,
really cool.
maybe some music. And then speaking of rock climbing, there's also a bunch of rock climbing at that uh, site. So it's fun to just kind of hang around, see the people climbing. They're curious what we're doing. All the runners who don't climb are curious what
Right.
they're doing. I of course do both, so it's fun. I'm like trying to look up at the wall, see what they're climbing.
Right, yeah.
Hmm.
That's no,
Yeah.
I do remember that because like when you were out here visiting, we chatted a lot about rock climbing, and I remember you mentioned like you had gotten into rock climbing before running. Is that right? Or was it the other way around? I can't
No,
remember
it
now.
was the other way around. So I didn't start climbing
Oh,
until just after college.
okay.
Yeah, my friend
What year was that?
so it was probably um 17 or 18
Okay.
that I started really climbing.
Okay.
Yeah, my friend had a she worked at the gym, so I would always go like after school and stuff and start and didn't really know what I was doing, but yeah, so climbing's just been a lot
Nice.
of fun too. I actually haven't climbed that much this year. Just things kept getting in the way, focusing on
Yeah.
other stuff. So it's all about
Hurricanes and yeah.
yep, those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, so you mentioned you went like, I think 45 miler, and then you said there was I think a 55 miler was like at this point your highest or furthest distance you had kind of
Yeah, it
progressed
was
to?
54. Again,
Okay,
weird
54. Okay.
distances. It was the
Right.
Manitou's Revenge race up in New York,
Oh,
which
yeah, I've heard of that.
absolutely insane race. There's 17,000 feet of climbing in
Oh my.
54 miles. Yeah, so
That's a lot. Yeah.
it's a ton of climbing, and it being the longest race I'd done, I was like, all right, well, it's only 4 more miles longer than what I've done, but with
Yeah.
17K feet of vert,
Now,
it was a huge challenge.
do you have a video of that race on your YouTube channel?
Not of that one. I have a really
Okay.
good blog post write up of that
Okay.
race. But for some reason, I filmed it, I recorded it, but I don't know what happened to the footage. I got behind on my editing, which, to be honest, I'm extremely far behind on my editing now as well.
Me too.
Things are so busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I went back to look at that footage and kind of review the race, I couldn't find it. I was kind of bummed out. I was like, "Dang, what happened to the footage?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Scott also has a YouTube channel. Like I just
I
said,
do.
it's
Yeah.
Scott Runs and Stuff, and he's got some great race videos of. There was the one race you did. I cannot remember the name of the race now, but it was like I remember the one section where it was like just crazy rock that you were like climbing over in the night. I think your headlamp died, and you were like using like a cell phone light or something. I believe. Like
Yeah,
what
that
race was
was
that?
Beast of the East 50 last December.
Yes, that was it.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, that race was, I would say, the first race of like competitive
Yeah, 'cause
career
you did
of
really well
ultra
there. That's
running.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, that race kickstarted this 2024 year of racing, and from then to now, I've just been like on a killer grind with different
Nice.
events. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely don't want to skip over. I know we kind of went to like 2023, 2024 already a little bit with my question there, but
Mhm.
I want to go back to I know you ran the I know I'm going to mispronounce this. Is it the Uwari
Ah, there we go.
100?
Yeah. Perfect
I got it right?
pronunciation. Yeah, you worry.
All right, I got it right.
Yeah.
um, yeah, you ran that, and that was your first 100 miler, right?
First 100, yes. That
Okay,
was
and
October 22.
yes, and yeah, let's tell me about that. How did your first 100 go? Was it like a lot of people's first hundreds where it was not really good, but you got it done, or was it like perfect and you sailed through?
Um, Perfect in the aspect of I finished.
Nice.
That actually leading up to it, that was my only goal. I had A, B, and C pace goals just to try to keep me in the right realm of speed, but I just wanted to finish. I actually had gotten injured leading up to it.
Oh,
Um,
no.
so yeah, I mean, I was doing training up for it. I think my peak week was 60 or 65 miles.
Okay.
So I mean, I trained very well leading up to it. I didn't have a coach. It was all self coached or just kind of
Right.
line about stuff. Um, and then for some reason, like it was after the peak training weeks, where I was doing like a mid taper, if you could call it. So I peaked and then went back down and was going to plan to do one more peak before like the full taper.
Okay.
But it was during like the deload weeks after the peak that my ankles just completely stopped being cooperative.
Oh, man.
I never even found out what it was. And it's kind of terrifying in the back of my mind now because at any moment, if I feel
Right.
a tiny bit of that type of pain, I'm like, oh no, what is
Yeah.
this? What's going on? But yeah, the injury was very strange. It was I could land on my feet, no problem. Like if I was hanging from a pull-up bar, just let go, no pain.
Right.
If I did from a standing position to a deep runner's lunge, no pain. But it was only when I released the foot off of the ground. Uh,
Okay.
so it's like I land is fine, but then I took my foot off of the ground, I would just get a surge of pain from
Huh.
my like originating kind of in my shin, but then just going straight through the top of my ankle to the top of my foot. Equally as painful in both legs, which is even more bizarre.
Yeah, that
And
is.
yeah, it wasn't shin splints. It wasn't a stress fracture of the metatarsals. I
I'm
went
assuming you
to
saw, like, doctors about it and everything?
yeah, I saw like
Wow.
PTs, chiropractors. I never took an X-ray because I like knew nothing was broken because I could like
Right.
land on it. So with 5 or 6 weeks left before the Uwari race, I switched my focus completely to strength training. And spent 4 to 5 days in the gym just doing different exercises. And I had a very strong running base of fitness, several hundred miles leading up to the injury.
Right.
But yeah, so I just kept building strength. And then I did a 5 mile run. I think it was the week of the race, or maybe the Sunday before the race on Saturday. And I was like, all right, well, this is the final test. If I can run 5 miles pain free, um,
Yep.
then I can enter the race. If I can't even do this, I'm gonna have to pull out. And so when I did
Yeah.
that without any pain, I also had ankle braces too at one point. But yeah, when I did that 5 mile kind of slow run walk jaunt the week before the race, I was like, at one hand, happy that I had no pain, and on the other hand,
Right.
kind of scared because now I had to start this race. So
Like, what the heck? What caused it? Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know what it was, but yeah, I ended up finishing the race. I was DFL. It didn't really matter, um,
Right.
but I did finish. Just an unbelievable amount of um, effort went into that race.
What's the cutoff for that race? Because it looks like you were, like, 35 hours and 38 minutes. So what's the cutoff for that race?
36.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Now
and again,
is it a like, what is this, a flatter race? Is this a lot of elevation gain? Or
so this is 100. It's 20.5 mile loops. So you do
okay.
5 loops of 20.5. That point 0.5 makes a huge difference because by the end it's 20. It's 102.5. You do an extra two and a
Okay.
half miles.
Nice.
No, not nice. Not nice when you're
Bonus miles.
at 100 miles fighting cutoff to do the
Right.
last, two and a half. Um, but yeah, so it's 20.5 miles of some of the oldest mountains in the entire country. So the mountains were believed to have formed like 20,000 years ago or 10,000, some crazy number. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
But they were honestly believed to have been, okay, maybe 20,000 feet. I don't know. Don't quote me on these numbers. But these mountains were originally massive, and
Okay.
over hundreds of years, they've just weathered down into super technical, super jagged, rocky. trails. Nothing's ever huge. Like a climb is never going to last more than like 3/4 of a mile,
Right. But it might be punchy, very steep.
but it's super steep, super rocky, super technical. And honestly, it is 99.9% single track, which
Oh,
I've
cool.
I've
I
struggled to
like
even
that.
yeah. It's definitely mentally engaging for sure.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely.
I'm not even sure if there's another 100-mile that I know of that is
Right. I mean,
99.9% single track.
that's rare because most of them have at
Um,
least what, 5, 6 miles
couple
of
of
double
miles
track or road or
or
something,
bridle road. Yeah. We have a maybe 20-meter parking lot, gravel parking lot that we cross from the end of one loop to the beginning of the next loop 4 times.
That's cool.
So, super technical, super difficult. There's about 18,000 feet of total climbing on that race.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow, that's more than I would have imagined.
it's definitely a lot considering where it is. It's
Right.
about
Yeah.
maybe 2 hours east of Asheville.
Okay.
So everybody knows Asheville, the big, massive mountains of the NC, but yeah, 2 hours east. It's generally rolling terrain.
Right.
Um, but there's like hardly anything that's flat out there either. The flat part is the gravel road or the gravel
Yeah.
parking lot between the two laps.
It's like all
Um,
constant rolling, little undulating hills.
yeah, so very difficult to find a pattern
Right.
unless it's like a strict downhill section or maybe a flatter section by the river. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
35 hours, 38 minutes,
So
and
what was
10
your
seconds.
yeah. So what was your like looking back at it now retrospectively, what was your like biggest mistake, we'll say, in that race or as a first time 100-mile race, what would you look back now and say was your
Hmm,
biggest mistake in that race?
biggest mistake. So I definitely used, I don't want to call it wasted, but I definitely used a lot of aid station time.
Right.
Um, be in the 5 mile or 20.5 mile loop, we have one, two, three, four aid stations, including
Oh
start
wow.
finish.
It's a lot of aid stations, yeah.
So, I mean, the time between the aid stations can take an hour to two, depending on how, which section exactly and how
Right.
technical or how much vert there is. But so it's a figure eight loop. So you have the crossover point is the aid station crossroads, and then you have a aid station at the far end of the figure eight loop, and then an aid station at the beginning of the figure eight loop.
Okay.
So it's like start, middle, top, middle, start, and then you
Gotcha.
just kind of go
Okay.
back and forth. And we had drop bags at the start finish and at crossroads. So I kind of planned it to where I would have everything I needed in both places so that whatever I needed, whenever I needed it, I would have it. And then if I picked it up at one spot, I would take it to the next spot and then pick it up again and drop back off. So it's kind of like an
Gotcha.
exchange
Okay.
of um, gear, like warm clothes, anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so logistically, a looped course is very easy because
Hmm.
you got stuff in both places. You're at the same spot multiple times. Your crew can see you in multiple places. So on that aspect, it's an amazing race. And the volunteers, the um, camaraderie, and the amount of effort that goes into this race is just unbelievable. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite of the longer distances. And speaking of this race is actually at the time of this recording next weekend. So,
Oh, really?
oh no, this weekend. Sorry, what am I talking about?
Uh,
Yeah,
It
so
was yeah, it was October 22nd in 2022. That's the year you ran it. So yeah, so it's this coming weekend?
yeah, so it starts the 19th and 20th.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so a lot of my
Very
friends
cool.
running it. A couple people doing their first hundreds.
Seems like it
Which
might be a tough run for a first 100 with
it
18,000 feet of gain.
it's definitely a hard graduate level 9 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10 on the difficulty scale of first hundreds. Yes,
Yeah.
but like
So
I
you would say
mentioned,
your biggest thing was like probably not wasting, but taking too much time at aid stations. Is
yeah, I
that
mean, I felt like I needed the time in order to
right?
finish.
Definitely.
But I mean, it's just like a toss up of if you waste too much time at the aid stations, you might not finish because you're too slow. But if you don't
Right.
take enough time, then you crash and burn. So delicate
Exactly. Like
balance.
walking that
Yeah.
fine line. I know, like, I think it was, I can't remember what race it was, but it was one of the 100 miles. I think it might have been my first 100 or maybe my second, but I looked back at my crew notes because I was always the type of runner that I would have a binder prepared for my runner, for my crew, that would have like
Mhm.
my splits and everything. And like they could write when I came in and when I left. And I looked back and I found that I spent like an hour and 45 minutes over that 100-mile race at aid, which was ridiculous. Like, I mean, I needed it, like you said, during the race. But now that I've got a little more experience under my belt and I know kind of what I need more, I've gotten that time down to like 45 minutes in a 100-mile race. And that's just like, I don't know, I asked you that question about what you thought was your biggest mistake because that could be something super helpful for
Mhm.
a person looking to go do their first 100-mile race is, in your case and in my case as well earlier, it was don't spend too much time at aid, but at the same time, take the time you need to finish the
Exactly.
race.
It's 10 minutes running on the course feels like forever, but 10 minutes
Right.
at an aid station, eating, changing, switching shoes, doing that kind of stuff is like
It
two
feels like
seconds.
that, like it's
Yeah.
just done. It's crazy the way that works.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
then, since I asked you what your biggest mistake was or your learning point, what do you think was your biggest success in that race, aside from finishing?
Right. So the mentality that I had going into it, so because it is a looped course, the real only cutoff is um so the race starts at 6 a.m. Saturday.
Okay.
With 36 hours, that means 6 p.m. Sunday.
Yeah.
6 to 6. And so the only cutoff is you have to start your last lap by what is it, 8 a.m. on Sunday?
Okay.
So that's 26 hours after the race begins.
Okay.
And then I think there's another cutoff on that last loop if you don't get to the far aid station by I think 1 or 1:30. But I mean, you have to start your last lap by 8 a.m.
Okay.
And so the mentality I had going into it was barring any extreme injury or my ankle issue flaring up and just I'm immobile, right? My goal going into it was at least make it to that cutoff. If I get
Okay.
timed out at that cutoff, I would have put in every bit of effort that I could have to get to that point. It would have been the first time I would have gone overnight. It would be the longest time duration of any event that I had done. I kind of wanted to reach my new distance PR of
Yeah.
54 miles, maybe like going to 100K, 3 laps. But even then, it wasn't ever a goal of mine to just get the 100K. It was do everything I can to get to that, at least get to that cutoff.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did make a video of that race that is on my YouTube channel as well. It's one of my, or is my most popular, best
Oh, cool.
running videos. But I had mentioned on my lap 4 to 5 transition. So before starting my last lap, um, forget who it was. Maybe it was my dad. Which shout out to my parents for joining me at that race because I know how
Nice.
difficult it is for them to get to some stuff on the weekends. My mom was there, my dad was there, my stepmother was there. Meant the most to me to have my
That's awesome.
most
Yeah.
immediate family at the biggest event that I had ever done at the time. But yeah, so I think my dad asked me, how do I feel? And in the video, I had said, I'm so ready to be done, but I'm so glad I'm not done yet because there was unfinished business.
Right.
It wasn't completed. So I think my most successful part of that race was just never quitting, never
Right.
ever feeling like, oh, maybe I don't have it or maybe I'm going to drop out. I absolutely never had that thought until the last lap when I was like fighting cutoff. I was like, oh no, I might actually not finish this
Yeah.
thing because the time was running out. But
I remember
yeah,
your video, like you were running pretty dang hard on that last loop to try to get in because like I don't know that I think you mentioned there was like another cutoff at that farthest like out point.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you were chasing cutoffs there or not, but I remember in the video at some point you were like, I know I got to get moving because I've got to beat this cutoff. And you were running like pretty dang good and, 90 plus miles in. It was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, so, uh, I think on lap 4 is when my watch died,
Oh,
uh,
no.
and so I didn't have reference of time, distance, or pace from the entirety of the last lap. I had the best pacer, Carlita, which, funny enough, the previous year in 2021, I ended up pacing her to her finish of
Nice.
her first 100,
Oh, that's awesome.
also fighting cutoff. I forget exactly when she finished, but it was like 10 minutes or 15 minutes before final cutoff.
Oh, wow.
It was an amazing, difficult
Right.
thing just to get her through to the finish. And, yeah, so she had, I had her pace me, just kinda close out that ending, I
That's
pace you, you
awesome.
pace me,
Yeah.
and, um, yeah, there's a landmark, the big bridge that is exactly 2.6 miles from the finish of each loop. Um, and I had asked her, I said, so I thought it felt like I was doing decently well, like 18 to 20-minute effort mile pace at 95 plus miles in.
Right.
And when I asked her what my splits were, and she was saying like 28s and 29s, like almost 30s, I was trying to do the math as best as my foggy, incoherent, exhausted brain could at
33
that
hour
point.
plus 35 or 35-hour
Um,
plus braid.
yeah, but at like 2 miles an hour, if I only had like an hour and a half left, I told her, I said, if I'm not at that bridge, 2.6 by 5 p.m., which is 1 hour,
Yeah.
right, doing almost 30-minute miles, like there's no way I can finish this thing.
Right.
Right. It just didn't make sense to me. And so I told her, just let me know when it's 5 o'clock. And I just pushed as hard as I could. Um, and she told me when it was 5, and we were not at that bridge yet.
Oh, no.
And it was just soul crushing, pun kind of intended, because one of the massive climbs on this course is called Soul Crusher.
Oh, no.
But, yeah, when she told me it was 5 o'clock, I was like, "There's just nothing I can do to finish this race. I will have gone 102.5 miles." And this is where that 2.5 comes in, because I
Right.
was like, "This bridge marks a mile 100, and
Oh,
to be
man.
there earlier than 5 so I can finish in time." Um, but yeah, I was just like, I don't think I have this in me." And that was the only time I was like doubting the completion, only because the timing just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But, so we got to the bridge at 5:07.
Oh, man.
So yeah, not that
That's like
much time
3 minutes.
to do the last 2.6 miles. And so I stopped on the bridge and I asked her, I said, "Are you ready to run?" And she was confused because she was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I've been walking beside you for the last 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
Um, but so I gave her a fist bump with my one hand and punched the heck out of the tree with my left hand, like drawing blood on some fingers,
Yeah.
and took off. And
Nice.
not necessarily took off in relation to the 28-minute splits I was doing. I like took off to where she couldn't keep up with me.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So as you mentioned, 35 hours, 38 minutes. So I mean, I
Dang,
did
you
that
were flying
last
that.
2.5
Yeah.
so fast. I actually went back a couple weeks after, well, a couple months after, and did a time trial segment on from the bridge to the end.
Right.
I had just done the bottom part of the figure 8 loop, so not the full 20. I was like 11 or so. And on fresh legs, having rested a long time, chatting at the aid station and at Crossroads, I did that 2.5 mile stretch 4 minutes faster, like as an all out effort
Right.
on fresh legs than I did it at mile 100 to 102.
That's amazing.
I was like, I don't know where that came from, but
That's so
I
cool,
finished the
man.
race. So
Heck yeah. That's
yeah.
amazing, man. But I gotta ask, you said that your watch died, so what kinda watch were you wearing?
So it was a Garmin Forerunner 245. And
Okay.
I will still to this day speak very, very highly of that watch. I had that watch for like 4 or 5 years. And it didn't just die. Like that was the issue. It like um none of the data was recoverable
Oh,
from the
no.
watch. It was like it broke me because even to this
Yeah.
day, my longest run on Strava or on any metric that I can look at is another race, GDR at
Right.
74 or something miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I told people as if I just took the watch off and tossed it into the woods at
Uh, we
5 a.m.
we all know it's if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
So
that's soul crushing. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and yeah, so the Georgia Death Race, I saw you did that as well. But now the
Mhm.
UARI, that was your only 100, right? Or have you done another one since then?
That has been the only 100 so far. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And now I know I really wanted to talk to you about a race you just completed. I think it was your most recent race, was the Barkley
Mhm.
Fall Classic
I
at
did.
Virginia
Yeah.
State Park. Now, I've done that one twice, so I know what that's about, but tell me about it. Like, tell me about that experience, man.
Yeah. So Barkley, man, Barkley was uh Barkley is Barkley. If you guys know anything about the race, anything about the 100 mile plus or minus that's held in was it May, March, earlier in the
March,
year? Yeah.
March, April, depends on the year, but yeah, Barkley
Um
marathons.
it became super popular a couple years ago when some documentaries were released about it, and now you can kind of get some more information. But generally speaking, it's a lot of it's off trail. You have to find books in the forest. The entry process is a secret at best, and to kind of attract more people to what this race is about and to give more people insight of what is the Barkley marathons. There is the race called Barkley Fall Classic (BFC) in the fall.
I gotta interrupt right there. There's an interview with Laz out there where he says that they created the Barkley Fall Classic to deter people from applying for Barkley because there's so many people that think, oh, I want to do Barkley, I want to go do Barkley, but they have no idea what that entails. And so it's like, go do the Barkley Fall Classic and then tell me you want to do Barkley. And it's like to deter people from applying to reduce the applications.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense because some people
Right.
have
It's
asked me
tough.
now, do I want to have or sign up for that? And I was like, I never wanted to sign up to Barkley before this race.
Right.
I don't want to do it now. Um, but yeah, so BFC is about 50K. We never know exactly how far it is. The route is never posted anywhere. It changes every year. And we're given the map the day before in a cloth form. So
Yep.
there's super nice memorabilia of the event of each year if you do it multiple years.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no GPS, no phones allowed. You kind of have to know the course based off of the map that you studied the previous night and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And this year it looks like it was I mean, it seems like it's about what it is every year at the Barkley Fall Classic. It kind of varies between 33 to 36 miles on average. And that's all gathered from if you do your own research, I mean, there's you can find out what the courses are that year, even if you didn't run it. There's plenty of things out on the internet, and you can plot it on, Gaia
mhm,
GPS or whatever you want to use, and get an estimate of the distance and the mileage.
yeah,
So every year, it hovers between like 33 to 36, and it's usually around 12 to 13,000 feet of elevation gain. Estimated. We'll say
right.
that. But if you ask some people, they'll say it starts and finishes in the same place, so it's a net zero. You don't gain anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
But tell me about that first climb of the race because I think this year it was different. Normally the race, excuse me, normally the race goes up Bird Mountain and there's always like a conga line that's crazy. But I think this year didn't it kind of go up like Chimney Rock or Chimney Top?
Chimney, yeah, the chimney one.
Yeah,
So I went up to the tower is the first climb.
right.
And so it started like maybe half a mile, 3/4 of a mile on the park road from the
Right.
parking area down the road before you make that right going up the trail. And
Now you had never been to Frozen Head before this,
I
right?
right. So I was
Okay.
completely blind going into it. I had
Right.
no idea any of the trail names, any of the mountains, any of the directions. It looked pretty straightforward on the
Right.
map when I looked at it, but of course you're looking at a huge area on a thing that's like
Right.
18 inches by 18 inches. So uh yeah, so I had really high aspirations going into this race for the placing and finishing.
Hmm.
And so I seated myself right up near the front, and when the cigarette was lit, I took off down the road. I knew that I wanted to be near the top, but not too close to the top, depending on because this year the meat of the Barkley with rat jaw and meth lab and all that stuff was pretty
Right.
early.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
and I remember actually from our conversation in Colorado a couple months ago how one year you were in the lead pack bushwhacking through rat.
Right.
And
It
I was like,
was.
I don't want to be that close to the front, but I want to be close enough to where I don't get like bogged down by a conga lines.
Yes.
So I took off. I was about in like the top 40 or so. Um, and there was 400 people that sorted this race. So right up near the front. And the climb up to the tower was, I mean, it was most of the time like a conga line, but the conga line was like, it was moving.
Right.
It was hard to keep up with the conga line. Because we're also not allowed any poles and I don't have too much experience hiking steep stuff without poles.
I was going
Maybe I
to ask
should.
what you thought about that it's called the final push on Chimney Top. It's the segment right before you get
Yeah.
to that big rock house.
Mhm.
It's 45-50% grade. Like it's steep. Like what did you think of that
So
final
steep.
push?
And just looking up, because at that time I still had,
Right.
people in front of me. I was like, man. But again, it's like not anything I've not experienced before. I've done super steep mountain races, super steep trails. And it wasn't super long, just that
Right.
segment. But after the first, what is it, like 4 miles, 5 miles of chimney tops, just like the last kicker. And of course, I didn't know what to expect because I had never been
Right.
on the trail before. So it was just like, man, that is a steep trail.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, I got up it and got to the tower, the first aid station, in like an hour 45, and felt pretty proud of that. And then started down Rat Jaw like super early into the race,
Yeah.
and at the beginning, like before doing the race, I thought this would be a good thing having the hardest sections first to get it over with, and then just have like they call it candy ass trails
Right.
remaining,
Yeah.
which I think was like 10 or 12 miles remaining, or no, I forget how many exactly were remaining, maybe 20 miles, 15 miles, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because you don't have any reference of
That's right.
things unless you
You're not going
plot
to
in. I
watch
just
or
don't have
yeah,
it open.
exactly.
I actually lost my only timekeeper on Rat Draw going down. Um, and so after the first maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours of the race, I had absolutely nothing. No
Yeah.
watch, no time at all. And that was difficult to deal with too. Um,
Yeah. So what did you think of like going down Rat Jaw? Like what was that experience like?
um, Going down was pretty wild. So people were trying to make little different paths, trying to find the most efficient way down. I'm not, I mean, most ultra runners aren't, but like I'm not a big guy. Like I weigh 145, 150 at best, not super tall. And the briars this year were like 7 to 8 feet tall, like clear
Yeah.
over your heads. Like I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
that's like common, but
Yeah,
like
they
I said,
always are.
I had never seen it. And so me trying to push down the briars wasn't that efficient because
Yeah.
I mean I was trying to use my arms, I had my gloves, but I ended up just like crawling, like crab crawling on my hands and butt kind of and just scooting my way down them underneath of them.
Yeah.
And this year, which is kind of ironic because it was the week before Hurricane Helene, but
Right.
this year, I mean, they hadn't seen any rain in that area for weeks. And so the whole mountain slope was bone dry and dusty and super loose. Um, and so occasionally, like all 4 or 5 people would just be in a slide, like uncontrollable slide, and we were just
Yep.
sliding through the briars, bumping into each other, trying to pop up on our feet at times. Um, but yeah, so if that last push on chimney tops is 45 to 50% grade, rat jaw is probably 60 to 70% in some spots. Like
Absolutely.
it,
Yeah.
unless you've done it, you can't explain how steep
No.
this thing is.
It's literally
Um,
probably, I'd say 70% in a couple places. It's
yeah,
insane.
some of the pitches, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I made pretty good time going down. It's like a mile worth of distance in about 35 minutes. When I got to the prison, at least I asked somebody, the guards, kind of when we hop over the ladders, what time it
Right.
was, and I just remember what time it was at the top of the tower. So yeah, 35 minutes from the tower to the prison, I thought was
Right.
decently well.
Yeah.
And then the neighborhood streets through the prison and stuff like that, it was hot. This year was
Yeah. It was very hot.
unbelievably hot. I mean, it peaked at 88 degrees this
Yeah.
on this day. Um,
And what a lot of people don't know too is like that section of Rat Jaw and where you're talking about now is like I know you're in the woods, but it's almost totally exposed to the
oh
sun.
yeah, I mean, I say the briars are 6 to 8 feet tall, so they're over your head, but for some reason the briars offer zero protection
I
against the
know,
sun.
right?
It's like how we get the absolute worst of both things, the sharp
Right.
briars and the beating sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, by the time we climbed back up Rat Jaw, it was, man, I like, it was early in the race, like early in terms of distance. And
Right.
like my whole body was just cramping up. My forearms were cramping, trying to claw at the ground. My legs were cramping. There's that like midpoint axis, I think,
Yep.
on Rat Jaw. People were
Yeah, it's Old Roosevelt Trail. Yeah.
sprawled out like a war zone, like dry heaving, throwing up. Um,
Yep, typical Barkley Fall Classic stuff.
and I was like, well, I guess gotta keep going.
Yep.
Um, but it was really good because the out and back section from Rat Jaw all the way down to Testicle, Spectacle, and back, I didn't have two-way traffic until the last maybe half of the downhill. And
On Meth Lab, coming down Meth Lab.
so we
Or
went down Rat, up Meth,
down Testicle, then back up
down,
Testicle, then
yeah,
then down Meth.
yeah.
Okay.
So the people that had to deal with two-way traffic going up Meth Lab while we were going down it,
Oh
just
yeah.
it was so agonizingly slow because we had to take turns between who went up and who went down.
Yeah.
So being that close to the front and pushing as hard as I did up until, the turnaround of that out and back, really paid dividends in me finishing and doing as well as I did. Because otherwise, like, I know some really strong people that ran that year that got stuck and just ran. I was like, not too many people behind me could have finished just based off of how
Yeah.
close I was. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
climbing back up Rat, it took me 75 or 80 minutes from the prison back to the tower.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm like, man, I was just completely wrecked. And so the last several hours of the race was super, super difficult. We had to go back up chimney too, the last
I know. That was the 50K loop, right? You had to
yeah.
go up chimney and
Mhm.
down another trail, and get back to the start finish for your 50K distance.
Yeah, 50K,
Yeah, how did the rest of
37.
those candy ash trails treat you? I mean, at that point, you're pretty your body's spent. Like you said, you were already cramping like crazy.
Mhm.
Were you able to run a lot of those trails, or was it?
So from the tower, going down, I don't remember what trail it was. Whatever we took back to the park road.
Yeah.
Um, so my strengths as a trail runner are downhill.
Mhm.
I'm super fast, super agile, I take a lot of risks running
Yeah.
downhill. And so going down this trail, it was like 2 or 3 miles, maybe 3.5. I actually passed like 10 people. I didn't know I
Yeah.
was that close to so many
Was
people.
this trail you're on? If it's the one I think it is, it's very, very rocky in places, like loose rocks, like probably about like softball size that you could step on and break an ankle. Like, is it that trail where the
Mm,
blaze is yellow?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was South Old Mac, which is very,
That sounds familiar.
very technical in places. Like
Yeah.
lots of ankle breakers.
So I was able to run pretty well. Despite my quads cramping like crazy going up the last push of Rat Jaw, I was still able to run downhill.
Good,
Where the
nice.
quad cramping got me good was the short little like bit of road uphill to the gate and
Right.
then up Bird.
Yeah.
Going up Bird, I just had zero power, zero uphill power.
Right.
I also completely forgot to fill my bottles at the gate aid station.
Oh no.
And so like a mile into the climb, I was out of water completely
Oh
and
gosh.
then couldn't eat any food because my mouth wasn't generating any saliva. I asked a fellow racer for some water. So thankfully he gave me like a little bit, a couple ounces that he
Oh
didn't
nice.
even really had to spare.
Yeah.
But because I had been out, he was, very forthcoming with the help. Um, and then so we traverse the
Well, wait.
ridge
Well,
line.
I say
Yeah.
let's not give any trail names away because we don't want to give the route away to
Oh,
people.
that's
We
right.
don't,
Go ahead.
I'll get tons of nasty emails if we do. But yeah, you traverse the route, you come back down, and
Mhm.
then yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot this is still like a secretive type of event. I just get excited talking about it.
I know, right? Me too.
Um, but yeah, so like when we got to the decision point, I had been out of water and out of food. Well, not out of food, just not having consumed any food
Right.
for like 2.5 hours,
Oh my gosh.
which is not a good place to be, especially on a day with like near 90-degree highs. Now we're
Right. And the
already
humidity
past,
too.
yeah, we were past the high point of the day. But it was still just like not a good place to be. And
Yeah.
so, um, when I was asked like marathon or 50K, like I immediately said 50K, like nothing, like just like talking back about the 100 mile at Uwari, zero part of me wanted anything to deal with stopping early.
Good.
Um,
Nice.
but I was expecting there to be water at this decision point.
Oh.
There was not. And so I got my bib punched, and Laz made a funny comment about why everybody was in such dire need of fluids and why he didn't have any. Kind of chuckled to himself, and I was just like not happy. I was like, I need water. Like I can't speak well right now because my mouth is so dry. So we still had to go like maybe a mile, felt like a mile at least,
Yeah.
to the aid station of the last aid station for the 50Kers. Um, Before we could get water. And I took
Right.
the I took the gallon jug and I was just like dumping it over myself like a madman. Um, yeah, got a little bit more food and then struggled through the last of that loop, which was like
Yeah.
10 miles, I think, 9 or 10 total miles.
And you got that chimney top climb, like we said too, which is for people that haven't been there, that first climb is really broken up into two different climbs. And then there's probably 3,000 feet of elevation gain in that 3.5 miles. Like it's no joke. It's a big climb.
Mhm. Yeah, with like a downhill section in there too. So the
Yeah, that's
first
after you
time I
come
was
off
on
the
it,
Yep.
yeah, the first time I was on, I was like, all right, looks like we're at the top of the climb. Went down, and then as you mentioned, we're not at the top of the climb.
That's when the real climbing starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at
Yeah,
least
that
I
was
knew
rough ridge.
at least I knew what to expect the second time around, but it was less, it still was not exciting to know that that was
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
but
anyway, you finished. You
I
got
did I
down.
did
You
finish. Yeah,
finished. You got your
did
Troy,
finish. I
and you
did.
finished. Let me see here. Do you remember? It was really recent. What was the time?
Yeah, 12:05.
12:05. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the
Um,
cutoff for that is 13:20, just like the Barkley Marathon's loop
mhm.
is 13:20. That's where they get that from. So you finished well under, and looks like you finished pretty well. What was it, like 45th?
46, 45.
Yeah, 45th is what Ultra Signup says. So
Oh,
there you
okay.
go.
45th. Yeah. So like I said, 402 people started.
Okay.
Um, the finisher rate of this year's race for the 50K was the lowest it's been in all 11 years or 11 runnings
Nice.
of it. And I think that was a combination of just the insane
The
heat,
heat. Yeah.
and the layout of this course having so many people kind of bottlenecked on the meat of the Barkley early on. Um, I guess I didn't do too much research in terms of like previous courses and anything like that, but
Yeah.
some years, I don't know if it's more towards the middle or towards the end, you have less congestion on those types of off trail
Yeah,
bushwhacking.
it was definitely more front loaded this year as far as
Mhm.
the off trail sections because normally you've probably got a good 10 miles in your legs, maybe even close to like 13 before you even get to like Rat Jaw. And this year, you guys probably only had, if the route you went, you would have only had maybe 7.5, 8, probably like 8-ish miles, close to 8, maybe a little more than 8 before you started descending Rat Jaw, which would be, yeah, like you said, with
I
that
mean,
many
for me, it was less
people.
than 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just nuts. Because normally, like I said, they go up Bird Mountain is kind of the routine, is what they usually do at the start. And so you have a good mile and a half of road so that if you're fast enough, you can really sprint it out and get out in front of people. Because I mean, I've seen pictures from the race photographers where it looks like there's literally like a half a mile line of people waiting to hop over a tree that's always across the trail. It's like
Oh, wow.
it's just an obstacle. And so if you're not in the front before that, you're wasting 30 minutes just to get over a tree. Like it's nonsense.
Yeah. I did hear from people that there was a huge blockage just to start Tower Trail
Yeah.
um, on the road, just queuing, waiting to funnel onto the single track. But
Wow.
for me, I was able to just run, and I mean, I ran a lot of the switchbacks, the initial
Yeah.
switchbacks, as I could, um, just to try and because I knew my
Yeah.
fitness, I knew like what I could manage for a 50K plus or not minus 50K plus worth of distance. And so yeah, I pushed decently hard to get to the top, and then, like I said, I think that served me as best it could have just to
Yeah.
secure a finish, but it was still kind of far off of what I initially thought was possible for myself that day. But that's
What was the what was the winning time this year? Was it in the nines or was it in the eights?
oh, I think
I
it was
already
9.
it's
Uh,
usually a low nine. I think one year there was like an 840 something, but I think it was normally it's like in the low nines for the leaders, which is just crazy. I mean, because it's a no joke course. So now you mentioned briefly that people ask you, so you have no desire now to do the real Barkley marathons?
I mean, I think it would be cool on a um there's like a benchmark or like a check mark type of thing to do at least one of those loops. But
Hmm.
um, from my understanding, like there's a lot more off trail
Oh yeah.
stuff and navigation stuff that we didn't have to do even without a map for BFC.
Yeah.
That's honestly not my strong point of like off course navigation. Now, I knew it was kind of nice. Every junction at BFC, it's like I knew exactly where to go.
Yeah.
Um, there were a couple places where like people were congregated trying to talk about the route and where to go, and I had like a 90% positive hunch on where to go. But
Yeah.
just by being there with them, I feel like we all had to discuss and agree on it together. So I lost a little bit of time, but I mean that's what Barkley is
Yeah.
about, just like camaraderie and communication. But yeah, I mean having to navigate with no information and find books that are hidden, like that's kind of difficult too.
Yeah. And they're not easy. Yeah, you're right. They are hidden. Like
Like
they're very hidden.
inside of trees type of hidden.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
down deep in trees too.
yeah,
Like you can't just look in and see it. You got to stick your arm in there.
right.
Like
So
it's but the Barkley marathons I think is probably I would say about 90% off trail, whereas the Barkley Fall Classic is probably only 25,
I was gonna
30%
say
off
25,
trail.
30. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's drastically different. And one thing that always gets me every year, because like I'm still in the Barkley Fall Classic Facebook page. Like
yeah.
I joined it when I first got in the race back in 2019 and I've stayed in it. But one thing that always gets me every year is it never fails. You see new people in that group that are freaking out about navigation. Like, I don't know how to use a compass. How am I going to navigate this course? I'm like,
For BFC, you mean?
Yeah, for BFC,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
Barkley Fall Classic. Like,
Mm.
I've told so many people, like, don't worry, you can go to Frozen Head State Park for your first time, like you did, and like you just attested yourself that navigation's not like your strong point, and be totally fine because in at least in the years past, there's been volunteers and like park rangers at pivotal turn points and sections saying, go this way. It's like, you don't need to navigate. I mean, you can go to that place without a map and run the whole stinking route. Like it's
Yeah.
not difficult. It's just the off trail sections are difficult and it's long and it's a hard race.
But
But
there's like,
navigation, there's none.
yeah, there's zero navigation of the off trail portions.
Right.
Like
None.
it's pretty clear where you need to go.
Yeah, it's the park trails is what'll mess you up because if you're
Yeah.
not from there, that
Hmm.
can mess you up. But the off trail stuff is like, no, just believe me, you'll know where to go. but so then I'm curious too. I looked at Ultra Sign Up, like I said, I didn't see anything else on Ultra Sign Up. So what's next for you?
So yeah, I actually had a race scheduled for last weekend, I think it was. It was up in Virginia. It was a new race, the inaugural Virginia Trail
Oh
Running Festival.
yeah, the one by Run Bum,
Um,
right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
So that unfortunately got canceled last minute due to the
right.
hurricane damage and all the stuff regarding that. Um, but the intentions for, excuse me, that race were to do a 100-mile relay
Yeah.
um, as a two-person team.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
So they have a 50-mile option. It is a rail, it's a trail, like no technicality. I think there's only like less than 2,000 feet of vert the entire 100.
Oh
So
wow, that's
super flat,
flat.
super fast. Uh, Still considered trail, but I mean, like you could do it in road shoes. And I've never been there, just like based
Yeah,
off of the description. But I thought it'd be much more interesting because I know I could do a 50-mile, solo run,
sure.
but to do a 50 combined miles of a oscillating relay of like
Yeah.
4 to 12 miles, and we didn't have a designated driver either, so we would have had to like leapfrog each other. Like it would have been quite the experience, and I'm
Right.
so sad that that got canceled.
That
Um,
sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, it's like you and I know what that fun sounds like. You tell
Right.
any normal person that, and they're like, "What?" First
They
of all,
think we're
50
crazy,
miles,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that was my last big thing for the year.
Right.
Um, but because that got canceled, I actually hopped into a 24-hour event, my first 24-hour event,
Oh,
which will
cool.
be December 7th, I think, 6th or 7th. And speaking of the damages that got incurred all over the
Mhm.
western part of North Carolina, absolutely
Yeah, it's
devastating.
horrible. Yeah.
So, I mean, so many places that I've run and camped and hiked and
Yeah,
all over thousands of miles are just
same
like,
here.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Tennessee, Western North Carolina, unbelievable amount of devastation. So this
Yeah.
race is actually a fundraising event for
Oh, I saw that.
the Western North Carolina town of Old Fort.
Is this the one
Um,
that, like, Anton Krupicka is gonna be a part of, and I think Sally McRae are raising
they're
funds?
on a panel.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
and John Kelly, speaking of Barkley, is
Right.
going to be there
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. So I hopped into the 24-hour event with a goal to raise money for relief efforts from the
Oh,
hurricane.
that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, so I'm asking people to pledge 25 cents up to $1 per mile that I can cover in 24 hours.
Now what's the
So
course like?
unknown at this time. I
Okay.
think that they're on the website description. It said like a 3-mile loop. Um, of course, it can't be of anything that got recently destroyed. So
Right, yeah.
hopefully, it's somewhat of a trail mixed with rows around the campground. But I don't know. I mean, I can kind of, if I looked at a map, piece together like a nice 5K loop from
Sure.
Camp Greer. That probably is the only thing that could be um, looped around there. There's also a biking race event, 6, 12, and 24 hours as well.
Oh, cool.
So it's just going to be a great way to help raise. The goal for the whole event is $2 million.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
That would
Uh,
be amazing. That would
yeah.
be absolutely amazing. And now speaking of John Kelly, like if anybody doesn't follow him already, go follow him on Instagram, Random Forest Runner. He has been doing amazing
So much.
work,
Yeah.
just delivering all these generators and heaters and gas and cutting trees for people. Like
Mhm.
he's really been giving back to his local community because he lives in, I think it's Boone, North Carolina, I believe. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, that sounds awesome. So what like do you have a goal? I mean, it's kind of hard to have a goal when you don't really know the course, but I mean,
So,
obviously,
I mean, I would love to hit 100 miles. It would be the second time I've ever hit that far.
but 24 hours, that's
In 24 hours. Yeah. So my dad the other day was like, "No, wait a minute. Didn't you do Uwari in 35, 36, and now you want to do 100 miles in 24?" Again, he doesn't exactly understand Uwari is
right.
like super, super, super difficult. And
Yeah.
what I'm hoping the course to be is a little bit, a lot more forgiving, hopefully to
Yeah,
contend myself for the 100-mile achievement.
that would be awesome. That would be
Mhm.
so. Now, when is that? You said that was in December, December 4th?
December, it's let me look at the race or the calendar here.
I know
December,
just I've seen a lot about it on
yeah,
Instagram.
it's that first Saturday of December, December
Okay,
7th. Mhm.
awesome. Well, if anybody is in the eastern part of the states, although I think they're also doing a virtual option, I believe.
There is a virtual
Uh,
option. Yeah, the in-person, at least the running portion or running
uh-huh.
half of the um, race is sold out. I don't know if there's still biking slots available.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Well, if it,
please sign
yeah,
up for the
definitely.
virtual option. Donate to any of the links. I don't know if you can put my link or whatever if you want to help support me.
Yeah, definitely. Send me the link. I'll put it in for
Um,
sure.
25 cents up to $1 for every mile. So 25 bucks, 50 or for
Right.
100 if I do the full thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That'd be
So
awesome. Yeah, go donate and help that area because like it's crazy. Like a lot of people. So I'm in Colorado for those that don't know, but where I'm at out here, a lot of people don't know the devastation that happened back east. Like it's just not getting the national coverage, which is
mhm,
very
it's sad.
surprising.
Yeah.
But I'm from that area. I spent 17 years of my life living in and around Asheville, North Carolina. So I know that area very well. I have a lot of friends that still live there. And so I see the damage posted on social media, and it is devastating. Like it's just whole towns
Unbelievable. Yeah.
completely gone, like wiped off the map, just gone.
Mhm.
And just so many lives lost. So if you can in any way donate to these relief efforts or go run the virtual event yourself and raise some money as well. Definitely would recommend and encourage people to do that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to run right now, or else I'd be doing it with you.
Yeah. Yeah, or at least in the very least, do some research if you're not familiar with what all happened and just spread the word
Yes,
about, you know, from the trail running community. Like these are the places that we just absolutely love to go visit and train and run and see. And now, I mean, so much of it has been destroyed.
I know. Yeah, it's sad.
Talking about like some state parks like Mount Mitchell, the highest point east of the Mississippi, like not opening for several months, up to a year plus because the
Well, the
parkway.
entire yeah, the parkway is closed still.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to be open for I would think 2026 maybe at the earliest is what I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, I had like tons of landslides. They have to do
Yeah,
slope mitigation efforts and redesigns of bridges, and
right.
engineers have to inspect the tunnel. Like the amount of undertaking it's going to take to get these roads and trails and races and parks open is just
Yeah, and just communities.
exactly, yeah.
I mean, there's still communities that aren't
Mhm.
accessible by vehicle. You have to like hike in or have like an ATV just because it's the whole roads are gone. Like it's just it's ridiculous. Worst damage I've ever seen in my lifetime,
Yeah,
other than like Katrina. That was probably up there, but certainly the biggest since Katrina.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's awesome, and I hope that you were able to raise a ton of money for that. Definitely send me the link, and I'll put it in the
yeah.
description of this for sure. And if this whole event could raise more than 2 million, I mean, 2 million is a big number. That would be amazing. But I hope people can blow that out of the water. That'd
Mhm.
be so cool.
The fundraising link, I got confirmation from the race director. It's open through the end of 2024.
Okay, cool.
So, just because the race is done doesn't mean the links are no longer active.
Nice.
So some people have pledged money ahead of the race to help, inspire and motivate me to get to that number. I think
Yeah.
I've raised almost 500 so far.
Oh, cool.
And then some people have mentioned that they will donate based off of my, completion of the mileage on
Yeah,
the race. So, whichever
that's awesome.
you decide, if you're listening and want to help out, you can pledge some money ahead of time or afterwards. Greatly appreciated. And it's uh, organized by the people from the exact location that the relief efforts are happening. So there's no
Right.
like, it's 100% of proceeds go to directly that race or that area that was
I
affected.
think it's Old Fort, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, Old Fort.
Yeah, Old Fort, North Carolina.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very small town. 'Cause I've been there many times. It's a very small town, and a lot of it's gone, a lot of damage. So I'm sure they would be incredibly appreciative of any funds raised and donated to help that community. But Scott, I have definitely enjoyed chatting with you, hearing all these stories, and
I can't believe it's been an hour already.
an hour and 15 minutes. I know,
Hour
right?
15. Oh my
It's
gosh.
flown by, man. It's been fun, like really. And I'm excited to pay attention to this December 4th race. What's the name of the race? Do you know the name of it?
I think it's just called Old Fort Strong.
Okay.
I'll definitely include that with the link that I send you. Because again, it's strictly a race to help raise money.
Right.
Um, for the
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, definitely be wishing you luck on that. Hopefully you can get that 100 miles out
Yeah,
there for
hope
sure and
so.
raise a bunch of money and get a new PR for you as well out there. Get that sub 2400. Be
Yeah,
pretty special, I'm sure. So, anyway, it's been good talking with you, man. I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. I
absolutely.
wish
Yeah,
you the
thank you
best in
so
that
much.
race. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. Hope to see you soon and get out on the trails together at some point.
I know we got to get you back out here in Colorado when I can run and let's go for some miles. All
Yeah, that'd be great. All right,
right.
thanks, Stephen.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Adventure Jogger, please consider joining our Patreon and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok for more content like this. Without your continued support, we would not be able to produce this type of content. So thank you so much to everyone that has listened, followed along, subscribed, liked, commented, you name it, donated on Patreon. Thank you.